Hi, I'm Matt with MUO.com, and today we're going to be doing a product review on this guy. This is the Canon M50 Mark II. Now it's an upgrade from the previous model, M50 Mark I, that Canon released back in 2018. So if you're watching this video, you're probably wondering whether this camera is right for you. Maybe you want to level up your photos, or maybe you're looking to start a YouTube channel. Either way, I'm here to help. I've gotten to spend about the last 3 weeks with this camera, and I've got to say I really like it. But there are a few things that you need to be aware of before you decide to sink your hard-earned cash into something like this. Now this video is divided into 3 parts. First, we're going to look at some of the features of the Canon M50 Mark II, and we're going to talk about who this camera is for. Then we'll discuss some of the pros and some of the cons with my experience of using this camera. And finally, we're going to answer that big question, should you buy the Canon M50 Mark II? Ready? Let's go. First, who's this camera for? Well, Canon has aimed this camera primarily at content creators, vloggers, budding photographers, and people who are looking to get into making content for YouTube. Canon sells a version of this camera, the M50 Mark I, on their website with a Rode microphone as part of a video content creator kit. The cost on that kit is about $699, which is the same cost for the M50 Mark II. So why would you want to choose something like this over the M50 Mark I when you can get additional accessories like a microphone? Well, I think that the M50 Mark II offers a couple of unique advantages for content creators that the M50 Mark I doesn't. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to switch over to the Canon M50 Mark II just to kind of show you the type of footage it can create. Currently I'm filming on an iPhone XS, but for the remainder of this video, I'm going to be using the Canon M50 Mark II just so you can get an idea as to what you can expect from this camera. I'm also just going to be using the 15mm to 45mm kit lens that comes with this camera package. Ready? Let's switch over. Alright, so now we've switched over to the EOS M50 Mark II. And we're currently shooting at 24 frames per second in 1080p with a shutter speed of 1/50. I've got the aperture cranked to 4.0 and we're using an ISO of 400. This is the kind of footage you can expect from this camera. So I'd like to talk a little bit about what makes this camera different than the previous iteration M50 Mark I. Canon's made some improvements to the dual pixel autofocus, and they've added a new feature called eye tracking focus. In addition to that, they've also added a clean HDMI out, and they've added an on-screen record button. These may seem like small features, and for some people, they're not going to be the best feature set. But for me, all of them are very important. The dual pixel autofocus is something that you're going to run into quite a bit if you're looking for Canon cameras. People think that this dual pixel autofocus is awesome, and I have to agree. One of the greatest features of this camera is the new clean HDMI out. Now on the previous version, the M50 Mark I, whenever you tried to hook the camera up to a TV or to a monitor, you would always get a bunch of information on the screen in addition to your image. With the M50 Mark II, all of that information has gone away. This is important for people who are looking to share their photos and share their videos directly from the camera. Now as far as the on-screen record button, that's also something that doesn't seem like a large feature, but it is something that's really important. For me, I do about 90% of my recording with that on-screen record button. So what's not to love? Well, this camera isn't really good at 4K. And one of the things that they market this camera as is a 4K camera. It can shoot 4K footage, that's true, but it crops that footage by a factor of 1.7, and that's over and beyond the 1.6 that images are already cropped. That means when you turn on 4K, you're gonna get a very tight shot. This may not be a problem for you, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna switch over to 4K so that you can see how this looks using the exact same focal length. So this is how the 4K looks for the Canon EOS M50 Mark II at the same focal length of 18mm as we were using just a couple of moments ago. As you can see, the top of my head's cut off, the bottom of my chest is cut off, and the shot in general just seems a lot tighter. The problem with 4K, aside from the close crop, is you also lose the dual pixel autofocus. Now this is really important because the contrast-based focus, while it still works, isn't as fast as the dual pixel autofocus. That means if I move really quickly, you may lose the focus of my face. This may not be a problem for you. For me though, I would prefer to use the dual pixel autofocus because it's faster, and when you're a one-man film crew, I don't have somebody who can track focus while I'm moving around. I talk a lot with my hands, I move a lot, I'm back and forth all over the place, so having very sharp focus or something that can track me while I'm moving is really important. Plus, I film in a very small studio. I'm basically in a bedroom in my house. So having the close crop factor doesn't allow me to be able to get the camera where I want it so that I can get my full body in the frame, or my gigantic hair in the frame. In order for me to do that, I have to sink down even lower, and then you're just getting the top of my chest and just basically my gigantic head. So now I'm gonna switch back to 1080p for the remainder of this review. That's much better. So now we're back in 1080p, 24 frames per second, a shutter speed of 1/50, f4.0, and an ISO of 400. All of these settings are the exact same between 4K and between 1080p. The only difference is the crop factor for 1080p presents a much wider shot, as you can see. I've got quite a bit more of the background in this shot than I had previous to. Also, my head's not cut off, and you can see the lower part of my chest. If you're looking for something that's gonna shoot 4K, this camera's probably not the best choice. So what else don't I like? Well, the Canon app is pretty terrible, and that's both the iOS versions and the macOS versions. I find with the iOS app in particular, it's really buggy. And what that means is that it will lose connection, it will often crash, both Wi-Fi and Bluetooth drop out. I end up having to reset the Wi-Fi settings of the camera, or I end up having to reset the phone. So, the app is one area where Canon can improve the product, and I think that if I had an alternative to be able to not use the apps, then I certainly would. Finally, like we've talked about, if you're looking to do some serious filmmaking, then I don't think the Canon M50 Mark II is gonna be the camera for you. For that, I'd suggest you save up a little extra money and maybe look into something that is a little bit more suited for that task. Now, I know we haven't gotten into too many of the technical specifications of this camera. However, I wanted to provide you with some real-world experience that I've had using this camera so that you know what you're getting into. But if you would like to read the full review, it is available on MUO.com. So should you buy the M50 Mark II from Canon? I think yes. I think it's a great buy. I think if you're looking to get into content creation, or you're looking to get into making videos for YouTube, or even if you're just looking to up your photography game, then the M50 Mark II is a great place to start. It's a great camera. It's perfect for somebody just starting out in these fields. So yes, if you're looking at a new camera and you're trying to decide whether this is the camera for you to buy, I think if you pick this one up, you will be very happy. Now, if you found this video helpful, please leave us a like and consider subscribing. For MUO.com, I'm Matt Hall. I appreciate you watching today, and we will see you in the next one.